to the How Could You podcast. I'm Lauren Tocci.
And I'm Ryan Tocci. Here we are, season finale. We're turning it all the way up to 11.
It's the 11th episode, so that works so nicely. Yay. Well, welcome everyone. This is going to be our last podcast of the year, and I think we're going to call this the end of season 1.
Sounds great to me.
I mean, I think we get to make up the rules for this.
We're just making it up as we go.
So yeah, I really think that...
Season finale.
And we thought the best way to kind of like end out this podcast for the year and this first season would be to talk about 2020 in film.
It all went so well.
And all according to plan.
All according to plan.
We have planned
all
for
those
one of
tentpole films.
Yeah, like Bill and Ted Face the Music as a tentpole film for the year.
Hey, that was a good time.
Yeah, it was a good time. So obviously this year in film has been rather strange. You know, we started out the year during the, normal lull time for the cinema where you often have like a lot of your... it's your Oscar bait time, which is always really exciting. But it's also that weird, like, horror genre time where you get those, like, odd films that come out, maybe a comedy here and there. But the first 3 months of the year is always really strange because it's like this tale of two cinemas where it's like all of your films that are up for Oscars and then all of your films that nobody would want to see normally.
Right now, I was thinking about that today because it's like this time of year is usually when you and I are just, like, watching all of these Oscar bait films.
We're at the movies.
And we're trying to see as many of the films that are going to be nominated or are nominated, and then we go to the theater and we see some of these, like, crazy ones. Like, our year started off with Bad Boys for Life.
Oh my gosh, in the weirdest theater experience.
Weirdest experience ever.
We went to because it was your 40th birthday weekend, and we went to...
Thank you for dropping that, I appreciate it.
No problem. He's 40. We went to a 4D theater experience down at King of Prussia, and it was, so you sit in these chairs, and like the whole idea is like there's like bursts of air that come at you, or scents, or water, but the problem is like how the movie starts is with a chase sequence, and it's gunshots are happening, and you're getting blasted with air cannons.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it so much, the moment when the silencer gun shoots and you get a blast of air in the back of your head. It's just a great time.
It's honestly one of the most truly disturbing and odd choices I've ever seen made in like it felt like something, honestly, out of that movie Matinee with like John Goodman. Like, it didn't feel right.
If somebody told me about this experience before we went to it, I wouldn't believe him. It was as odd as it is. The fact that these were created, I give all the credit in the world. And maybe a different film would have been a lot of fun, but I just came out nauseous at the end of this movie.
And I came out thinking, thank God we're in Philadelphia, because I think my spinal fusion has just come apart and I need to go over to Children's Hospital. Yes. So it was definitely like an odd start to our cinematic year, and then obviously things got even stranger from there.
I mean, the movie industry obviously as a whole as everywhere is, that's what we're going to be focusing on today, but it's a weird year, obviously, right? Everything's changing, and it's not going to be the same. You and I are movie theater enthusiasts. We're champions of it. We are right with Christopher Nolan, and all of this. But it's going to be different, no matter how we look at it.
Well, and of course, you and I have talked a lot about this in past when we talked about like things that are released straight to Netflix or do the simultaneous Netflix theater run. And you and I are fortunate enough that we can go to the movies pretty frequently. And during this time of year, we're normally at the movies like 3 or 4 times a week. And that's not an exaggeration. That's like true to form, especially during Oscar season. But, and we've talked about, like, the democratization of the theater experience, things being released at home, and kind of our torn feelings about it because we feel like that communal engagement of watching a film together in those spaces is such an important part of cinema. And there's so much, like, particularly in the early, studies of cinema and the rhetoric of film, it's so important to be in that theater experience. But there's no way of denying that this year has really changed, I think, how, unfortunately, we're going to have to look at that experience.
Definitely. I mean, I keep saying this, and I think it's true. I believe the movie theater experience eventually here, and then this year, obviously, has pushed it more quicker, is going to be more like a drive-in experience, where you only, in a few years, will have a few that are around, and it's a very niche type piece of entertainment.
Well, and I think the problem is like that, and certainly like drive-in theaters did well this summer,
right?
Because like
the irony,
yes, because like not only was like the like as you said, like the niche experience of like just being able to go outside and like do something and have an event to go to, but it was like the safest form of doing that because you can truly socially distance at a drive-in and still have like a movie experience. You know, my hope is that that's not the way it goes, and if it is, you know, then fine, then you know, maybe do away with your big box, you know, cinemas, but like don't let the art house experience die. Now, obviously, this is something that's very like near and dear to our hearts, you know, because of our love for the Frank Banco Ale House Cinema in particular, you know, and Arts Quest, you know, certainly wanting to see that thrive, and our other local theaters, you know, Emmaus Theater, the Colonial Theater, like we don't want to see those experiences go away, you know, for so many reasons. The selfish reasons being there's no activity you and I love more than being in a movie theater.
No, you know, you could put us into a movie theater and see the worst film possible. We could be watching Manos, Hands of Fate, and 2 hours, you turn off the lights, this dark theater, you know, everything's gone, your phones, everything, and you just watch it, and it's just beautiful, and, you know, it just takes us into the film. And even in the worst films, we love going to.
Yeah, because it's the whole experience of it. And I'll say for, you know, two minds that are not terribly quiet any other time in their life, we both find the theater experience very centering and very calming. And we know it's not everyone's thing, but I know for the two of us, it very much is a transformative experience.
You know, and it's going to be different. I mean, we already know with WB, you know, they're moving over to HBO Max, and all their big films are going to be streamed, and that's going to be huge. I mean, you know, seeing Dune on a small screen to me is not going to be the same as seeing it, you know, in a theater experience. But I also appreciate, you know, the situation. You and I have been, you know, our movie theater experience in this past year is, you know, we're not going to theaters that have people in it.
No, and it's something we talked about a lot because I think the movie theaters, particularly, and again, to like highlight again, Frank Banco Ale House Cinemas, when they were open, I think they were doing everything right and everything possible. It was just a lack of comfort level.
Thing. Yeah, you know, now you and I, you know, we're talking a lot about the negatives of the industry, and there's some more to talk about with that because, you know, we saw the perceived failure of Tenet. You know, because
I think the failure of Tenet
came out, and everybody thought this was going to be the resurgence of the movie theater. This was the movie to keep it alive and the theater experience, and it just didn't. It underperformed. Now, we could argue that some of that is the film. Because I think you and I have both talked about we would like to see it a second time and maybe give it a second chance, but you and I both were underwhelmed by the film as a whole. I think that is the majority of the, you know, people that have seen it have felt.
And honestly, and I've had conversations with very few people who have seen it, you know, like long conversations, one in particular, and the thing I came out of it going was thinking, I'm trying to convince myself to love this because it was new and it was a film that we were anticipating for this year and we actually got to see come out. So it felt like, okay, you know, this is what we've been waiting for, a big blockbuster, well-acted, well-directed film, and then I left it not feeling that. So I felt myself, like, convincing. Like, and I'll say this, the mark of the film and the worth of the film is a John David Washington performance, because I will show up. If he played Manos in Manos Hands of Fate, I would show up for that movie.
John David Washington, Robert Pattinson.
Excellent performances.
Amazing performances.
Excellent performances.
I'm not going to argue at all about that.
Yeah.
Your and my movie theater experiences, where I guess getting at with that has been interesting this year, right? Because we talked about we had this really unique Bad Boys for Life movie theater experience.
Unique is a word for it, sure.
The last movie that we saw with audiences was Emma.
Yeah, it was a small
audience. Small audience. Right before everything started to shut down.
We saw it on March 13th.
March 13th. And that was the last film we saw with an audience in the theater. A true audience in the theater. A paying audience to the theater. And, you know, I loved it. I mean, that movie was great.
I loved
that
Emma.
Was such a, and then from there, we tried to give going back to the theater. We went to see The Dark Knight, and that was one of the best movie theater experiences I've ever had. And simply because I missed it.
Yeah.
We had been months since we had seen it. The theaters had reopened back up. We happened to go in and nobody else was there. It happened to only be you and me in the theater. So we had a private experience on its own.
Yes, and it was kismet because I can say I was quite nervous about going, and it was in July, and we went, we masked up. They had phenomenal procedures. All credit to the Colonial for being able to make that a very enjoyable experience because of how much they foregrounded their procedures. And then it just happened. We lucked out that there was no one else in there.
Yeah, and to me, that was a film I appreciate it so much. It's funny, we're talking about Nolan with Tenet.
Yes.
But then we see Dark Knight and it's like, oh my God, this is what the movie theater experience should be. And missed it. And that was great. And the other thing we've had the luck, the good fortune to be able to do is a couple of times, and I highly suggest anybody that really misses the movie theater experience to look into this, because renting movie theaters, you essentially, are paying to rent the theater for a couple of hours, and you go and it's almost done like a private party.
And you get to pick whatever movie. And here's the thing. If you had said this to me...
Each theater does it a little different.
Yes.
Each theater financially is a little different. Each theater, what they allow you to play is a little different.
Yes.
But
if you had said this to me this timeline of doing that, I'd be like, well, that's like the fantasy. You get a whole movie theater to yourself, and you get to pick what we're watching. And please understand, with all of this, like, we are, because we're a movie podcast, we're obviously talking about the film experience of 2020. We know, like, obviously the most larger context and narrative here. This is a very, very small component. It's one of those small things, luxuries that we've missed, and we're waxing poetic about this because we don't want to see this experience go away, and we're worried that the tenor of things ahead is that you're not exactly, the studios are not exactly setting up the theaters for when it does feel safe to go back in, whenever that is, for them to have the modes to be successful. And I think that's the thing we're kind of worried about and talking about.
Of course.
So obviously there's a lot of other context of 2020 we're not discussing.
I think the quality of film that's coming out is not to be questioned. I don't think the movie industry on a whole is in doubt. I mean, you're right, because we see it just in the quality of television, but the films are being beautifully written, beautifully directed. They're still going to come out, and we're still going to get that. So, we're talking about that, and the other thing to really talk about is, what will that be, though, with the streaming? HBO Max is doing it. They're going to drop all the films in there at that. Disney tried and, again, failed with their Mulan experiment.
Which is, I think, why we didn't get Black Widow sooner.
Yeah, with...
I don't think Disney was saving that for the theaters.
Having a streaming service and then trying to charge an abundance of money on top of that. Listen, I know it's all Disney safe space here, but I am the one that will sometimes...
Are you criticizing the mouse?
Don't criticize the mouse. This one I am. That one had me fuming.
Yeah. Well, because here's the thing.
And that was a film I could not wait to see.
I know. And this is what I'll say. And this is because, like, the one kind of saving grace I have always said with the things being released to streaming, which prior to everything happening, I would have ranted for at least an hour as to why we have to protect and preserve the theater experience. But the one thing I would always say is this. Again, not to use this word again, but it democratizes the theater experience, because for the family who does not have means to go,
absolutely,
it allows for that experience, and whatever that reason might be that you don't want to go, comfort, financial reasons, availability in your schedule, it allowed people to get that experience at home. So I will agree with you. It felt like quite a kick in the knees to say, well, you're all home. Well, now I'm going to charge you $30 for this movie, instead of going, no, we're just going to give it to you and hope that the subscriber and the viewership, and I get it, everyone has to make their money, and this is probably, going to lean towards, if we, really dive into this, more of like a socialist rant from me about, about like why that felt like really egregious by Disney, but it was a failed experiment.
It was failed, and I don't think we'll see it again.
No, I don't think so either.
And I think the fact that HBO Max is going to be doing what they're doing with WB shows that I don't think Disney they'll fail miserably if they try to pull that again.
No, and I truly will point to, not to like circle back to this, but like I'll truly point to, I think that's why they never did that with Black Widow, because it failed. I think if it had been successful, we would have had Black Widow this month. They would have put it against Wonder Woman coming out.
So that's all kind of the 2020 theater experience in a nutshell, right? But as we said, there's a lot of films that came out over the year. And I think one thing you and I will say right off the bat is you and I we'll watch a lot of new movies a year. You know, usually we do a list at the end of the year, and we're up to 100 some, you know, brand new movies through the year that we've seen.
If you're listening to this and you're like, how do you have time to watch 100 movies? We don't go outside much, even on a normal year. This is our hobby. This is what we do.
This is what we do. And then now we bring in of us just talking about it to you. But we didn't see as many new movies this year, and some of that's for what came out, but also that's because of this podcast, because of, you know, unfortunately, the quarantine of it all. We were watching a lot of old movies throughout the year.
We needed that comfort food.
Yeah, there was a lot of comfort food in that. And then we watched a lot of holiday movies once we got to September, between Halloween films and then Christmas films.
Don't forget about the Thanksgiving movies.
the 4 Thanksgiving movies, yes. So, you know, we watched a lot of old. So we didn't have as many new movies this year, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of good. But first we'll start with the bad.
Yeah, the lowlights of the year.
So this is going to be our list of... The first, we're going to start with our list of our least favorite films of the year.
Top three least favorite
films. Do you want to start out?
Yes. So I have 3 films, and it's really interesting because all 3 films, they have something in common. I loved the trailer. I was deeply excited for them. And then I watched them and was very upset that reality did not meet expectations.
I'm quite interested in what your top 3, because I don't think they're going to all fall into the same as mine.
Then. And I'm not going to rank them. I'm just going to say all 3 films of Succession, and now you know exactly how I feel about all of them. And the 3 are The Way Back, Wonder Woman 1984, and King of Staten Island. Because all 3 movies, by the trailers alone, I was highly anticipating. I went in with excitement, and all 3 Actually, I'm going to say all 3 for the exact same reason were movies I didn't like. Poor use of the material that you had, poorly directed. All 3 across the board.
Wow. Shots fired.
I feel comfortable with what I'm saying. And
one of those I'm a little shocked that you went that far with, and that's the Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I'm not happy about Wonder Woman 84.
Patty Jenkins.
Yeah, and
I know you like Patty Jenkins a lot, so...
But you can attest to this. When they did the teaser trailer for the fact that Patty Jenkins is directing a Star Wars movie...
Oh my god, yeah, you were over the top. I think there were tears in your eyes.
I cried.
Of course, these days, you cried up Folgers coffee commercials. So.
No, I cry in espresso commercials. Yes. Get it right. But no, when the Patty Jenkins drop came in that trailer, I cried because it was like, you know, first female to direct a Star Wars film. You know, the weight of that felt really incredible. I loved how they foregrounded it, how they kind of like set like why she's so apt. I don't know what happened with this film. I think I'm still processing it. We only have watched it in the past few days, so I don't want to speak on it at length.
Yeah.
But I just didn't like it.
Because we're talking a lot of new movies, normally we're always we will talk about spoilers because we generally talk about old films. We're going to avoid... you know, spoilers on these films that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
So, because these are all new films, so a lot of you have not seen any of them. And we hope maybe between us talking about them, maybe it'll have you want to go out and watch them. My worst films of the year are very similar. I agree with you. Wonder Woman was a complete mess. It didn't make my top 3, but it was a mess and was very close to it. I agree with you with The Way Back. Again,
I wanted it
just
so
disappointed
bad.
in it. I wanted to see it. I was excited when we watched it. I think that was one of the ones we actually purchased when it came to watch it, and just very disappointed. I do want to say my honorable mention, only because we've actually not watched it, but to me the worst film of the year is Songbird, because anybody that wants to put out a film about the pandemic of the coronavirus and try to make it a big budget film.
It's Coronavirus 23.
Yeah, what a bunch of BS that is. Mad when I saw that trailer.
That trailer's pretty
offensive.
If you haven't
seen, I mean, if you want to just get mad, watch the trailer on that. If you don't know about it, it was, what's his name?
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay.
So
that puts
be
it right
mad
there.
already, because it's Michael Bay.
I mean, it's got a good cast, but no, just inappropriate. My number 2, Impractical Jokers. I don't know what I expected.
We're really using the term film loosely here.
It was
really bad. Dumb. I can't believe you made me watch that.
I thought we were just going to get a goofy movie, and they tried
bad.
I don't know what they were trying to do with it. It just is bad. And I agree. Number 1, King of Staten Island, easy. I wanted to turn it off halfway through. That movie was just... And that movie had all of the framework to be a great film.
It really did.
And a different director and a different actor. And this is, I'm not trying to take spots at Pete Davidson, but it's just, no, I'm sorry. Because I want to love that film. Because where it's written and how it's written and what it's about, just wanted to connect with it, and that film just felt flat.
And I think the problem was, like, I think you're right, like, it had components that should have made it work. And here's the thing, and I disagree with you on this, because, like, I think Pete Davidson is someone who's really compelling and interesting. I applaud him for his open approach to talking about mental health. And I think there's a lot of his comedic stylings I can really get behind, but this film just failed, and it shouldn't have. And I think that's what makes me mad. Again, it's what unites to me those top three. Ben Affleck's performance in The Way Back, Wonder Woman after, the sequel, the follow-up to Wonder Woman, which was felt like a revelation, and then King of Staten Island. These are just films that should have been a lot better than they were.
Agreed. Completely.
It's upsetting.
I do want to say 2 movies I was most surprised by this year in a positive way before we get into our list of our top films of the year.
Go.
That didn't make my top, but The Invisible Man.
Okay.
Because as a movie, I knew the entire film before I saw it.
Because we watched the kill count on it before we...
Yeah, Dead Meat's Kill Count on YouTube, and which I loved it. I thought it was beautifully shot, beautifully acted, just a really good movie. I wish I had seen it right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And Host, a lot of credit to Host.
Oh, yeah, Host is great.
Who filmed a Zoom horror movie over quarantine, and it works. It works. It's really
terrifying.
Well. Doesn't try to be longer than it needs to be. It's scary. Just really props to that movie.
Is it like an hour and 15 minutes?
Yeah, it's short. It's very short. But just so good. Just really, really well done.
Yeah. I actually thought Host was going to be in your top 5, so now I'm really curious.
So getting to the top 5. 2020 new releases.
So how we're going to do this is you're going to give your top 5.
Okay.
We're going to assume there's going to be some overlap here, so I will interject when I'm like, hey, I have that, but it's at this number.
Okay, that
or
works.
Maybe we'll be completely divergent.
We'll see.
I doubt it.
We already know off the bat.
Our number one is the same.
Actually, before we get into that, did you have any... I know there were some new releases in 2020 that we did not see, that we wanted to see, and we think had the potential to make our list.
There are 2 films that we haven't watched that I cannot wait to watch. We'll be watching them in the next few days. And there are 2 films that it's just the weight of the material and the runtime has been the deterrent, because it's 2 films we want to really sit down and watch. And it's Da 5 Bloods, directed by Spike Lee, and The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent. And Da 5 Bloods is particularly, I think we just kept waiting for, okay, this is the night we're going to watch it, this is the night, and we just didn't sit down and watch yet. And I love Spike Lee. Probably my favorite Christmas gift you get, other than my lightsaber, my favorite Christmas gift you gave me this year is he gave me a Criterion collection of Do the Right Thing, signed by Spike Lee. And I froze for about 15 minutes on Christmas morn when I opened it. So it's particularly egregious that I haven't seen Da 5 Bloods yet. And it's one I want to correct very, very soon. Maybe after we're done recording.
Yeah, both of those we definitely need to see. Some ones that I want to see that probably aren't going to be the quality of that, but just movies I wish we had gotten to see. Gretel and Hansel, which is the title. Clouds, which is about Zach Zobiak. It's on Disney+. It looks like just a nice family, heartfelt movie. Mm-hmm. If you don't know the story about him, please check it out. His song is beautiful.
It really is.
It's a sad story, but also a very inspiring story. Completely opposite end, Swallow, which is a really weird thriller mystery movie that looks like it's going to be very hard to watch, but really interesting. Shirley.
Oh my gosh, we didn't watch
Shirley Jackson. Yeah. The Boys in the Band looks amazing. And then I'm thinking of ending things because we love Jessie Buckley in this household, and we need to check that one out.
Yes, and the trailer for it was very compelling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely.
I'm just glad we haven't had it spoiled, honestly, at this point. Yeah. So getting into our top 5 films we did see.
Yes.
All right, so you're going to take this first. I will jump in. Ryan Tocci, take us away.
Let's start really quick. Just let's get everybody. The movie that's going to be number 1 on both of our lists, we saw last night. It was the latest movie we saw, and we both looked at each other and went, well, that's our number 1. Let's just go with our top 5 before we get to that. And we'll get to that film in a few moments, but our top movie we both agreed on without a doubt, and we're going to talk about that separately than our list here. My honorable mentions really quick, because I'm going to go honorable mentions.
Of course you are.
Hamilton.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Didn't really know if it should fit in the list or not, but that was just great. That's a movie that Disney could have probably pulled off doing the...
I would have paid any amount of money.
So, beautifully done. Emma, which we talked about earlier, and Host. Number 5 for me, On the Rocks.
Yay! Sofia Coppola.
As you listen to the show, you'll know Sofia Coppola, huge fans here of Sofia Coppola and all of her work. Very little down notes to us.
Not our first theater experience together, but our most significant first theater experience.
Lost in Translation. Absolutely. That was a big one for us.
At the Strand in Kutztown.
Yeah, with our friend Paul.
Yeah.
Bill Murray, Rashida Jones, Marlon Wayans, who played a really good part in this.
Yes.
It's about Rashida Jones. It's a love letter to New York. I mean...
did not New York look so delicious?
Oh my gosh, right? Yes. Just her, Rashida Jones, her father played by Bill Murray. He's kind of like a playboy around town. She thinks that her husband is cheating on her, and so she kind of connects with him, and it's about them kind of going around the city and, her, kind of finding, out what's going on while reconnected with her father, and it's Bill Murray,
But it's like Bill Murray.
It's like Bill Murray, which we love, again.
How do I say this? It's like the bon vivant, really, it's like a sultry Bill Murray.
Yes.
And it works so great.
Bill Murray. I think at one point, though, I looked at you and went, I think this is just Bill Murray.
Fine.
Highly recommend it. It is on Apple Plus, so that's the only downfall of it, but a lot of these films you're going to realize it depends on what streaming service you have. But highly recommend that one. Did that hit your list at all?
It did not.
Oh, interesting. All right. I thought that one might, so all right, cool. Number 4, Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey. Love this movie.
You really do love Jingle Jangle.
Oh my god, This movie is just what film should be. It's got awesome music that gets you dancing and wanting to sing. I mean, it's got beautiful costuming.
Oh, the costumery is
insane. Oh my god,
insane.
Christmas all in it.
The production design, insane.
Production design, just magical. I mean, it's a family fantasy musical. It's PG. It's on Netflix. David Talbert directed. David E. Talbert, I believe. Mm-hmm. The people you're going to know is Forrest Whitaker, Keegan-Michael Key, Hugh Bonneville, Patricia Rashad, but the star is Madeline Mills as Journey. She is just awesome in it, and this movie, it's kind of like a Christmas version of
The Greatest
Showman, but better story.
Yes. Yeah, because even the villain in this, you're like, I get you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of understand
just
where you're
fun.
coming from.
Really, really great.
The music in it is so immediately iconic. There's actually so much about it that's so fantastically iconic. And it's touching. I think it works very nicely as a Christmas film, but I think it's definitely something you can watch at any time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some people question whether it was a Christmas film.
Which I kind of get.
Yeah, I get it. I can see why you would think that, but I also think that it has all of the themes of Christmas films. David E. Talbert, he loved old Christmas films. He's actually funny. The last 4 films he's made are all Christmas movies. But he wanted to make...
because he made Almost Christmas. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember them all.
El Camino Christmas.
Yeah.
He wanted to make a film that, brings back that old kind of feel of a Christmas family film, and that his kids could see themselves in. And it works completely.
It's so beautiful.
I can't wait till next Christmas season to watch it again.
That Forrest Whitaker's performance, it'll just hit you right in your heart.
And that's a good thing. It hits all those notes, right? It's got emotion in it. It's got excitement in it. It's got fun. It's just, it's good.
And it has a lot of really empowering and important messages throughout the film.
Definitely.
And it's magical. And I can't undersell that enough. It feels like magic.
Yeah, it hits all that friendship, family, all those types of things that you want in a movie.
It was at my number 3 spot.
Oh, was it? Okay, nice. I apologize.
No. We knew there was going to be overlap, and I knew when I was writing down Jingle Jangle, I was like, it's really just a matter of what number we put it at. So good choice.
And all right, and I will say my ranking, I ended up ranking these the top 4. I could go back and forth with these.
I get that.
And here's a movie that I'm wondering if it's going to be on your list, but I'm going to gush over it and gush over it. Troop Zero.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
It didn't make my list, and it hurt me not to put it on
gosh.
my list. Because as one of my
Podcast over.
Here's the thing. Because it's listed over here on the side and like in the margins of my notes, because it truly, honestly has one of my absolute... Actually, I'll say firmly, my absolute favorite scene of the year is in that movie. Okay. And it's the performance.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah.
Not to spoil too much about the film.
Yeah, I know what you're doing. But
the performance. You know what I'm talking about.
Once you see it, you'll know that.
You'll know
what I'm talking about. This is another PG family film. It's an Amazon film. Came out right at the beginning of the year. It's directed by Bert and Bertie, who I'm just getting to know.
Yes.
Written by Lucy Alibar, who actually also wrote Beasts of the Southern Wild, which is an interesting... Yeah. So, again... Oh,
I see that now.
The cast that you're going to know, Viola Davis, Jim Gaffigan, Allison Janney, all great. But McKenna Grace as Christmas Flint will go down as maybe one of my all-time favorite characters. That character just melts my heart the entire film.
You find yourself with everything she says smiling and crying. And listen, obviously I think I've given away, and anyone who knows me who listens to the podcast, you know I'm rather emotional, but there is something about her performance. It just like...
She is so good. So this movie, it's kind of like... How do I put this the right way? The poor version of Troop Beverly Hills.
That's the exact way of describing him.
It takes place in 1977 in Georgia, and it's about this misfit girl who just is obsessed with outer space. Her mother has passed, and she's got this obsession, and she finds out that she could have a chance to record something to go into outer space through NASA if her troop wins this contest. In the for the Girl Scouts.
It's essentially it's like they have to go to like the jamboree and like win all of
And that's kind of your framework of it, but it's again a movie about your misfits who bond in friendship and the people that kind of outcast them and how they handle it. Oh my god, this movie just from beginning to end just had my heart just beaming. I just love this movie. And McKenna Grace, again, as Christmas Flint, I cannot tell enough. Like, I just want everybody to see her performance because she is just awesome. She's just so much fun. You just love every word that's coming out of her mouth in this movie. And McKenna Grace is interesting because I did not know the parts that she plays. But she was like and I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to go over these parts that she's played. Young Carol in Captain Marvel.
Oh.
Young Tanya Hardin in I, Tanya. Young Sabrina in the Sabrina TV show.
Which I do watch, so yes and no, I didn't know that.
Young Emma in Once Upon a Time on ABC. And
my favorite TV show.
Young Theo in Haunting of Hill House.
Mind blown.
And I'm so excited, and we'll get to more talking about this later, but... She's going to be one of the leads in the Ghostbusters Afterlife. So...
And I'm sure, podcast audience, you can feel this. Like, Ryan's energy about this movie is electric. Like, when we finished it, I thought you were going to run laps around the apartment talking about this movie. It was...
Smile ear to ear, yes. Tears in the eyes. That's what I want out of a movie. That's what this movie gave me.
I'm just going to say one thing, too. I'm going to see if it makes him cry.
Yeah.
I am here.
Oh. Stop it!
I took him out. And please watch the movie and you'll understand why that line is so significant.
Oh my god. Yeah, just her to... yeah. All right, moving on. How do I go to... How do I rank something above this?
Nothing else is above it.
The next two movies are just two beautifully written films to me. I'll go a little quicker on these, but... Number 2, Scare Me.
Oh, yeah, great movie.
It's a Shudder film, not rated, weirdly enough, comedy horror. And to me, if I ever was able to write a film, that's the film I want to write. Like, if you ask me that question, it's directed, written, and starring Josh Rubin. Also, as he plays Fred in the movie, and then Aya Cash, who plays Fanny, I didn't know much about her. She's awesome in this movie.
She's on The Boys, from what I've heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it makes me want to go see The Boys, because she's
really
so
does.
good in this movie. And then Chris Redd also has a part in this movie, and a lot of people know him from SNL. He plays Carlo as the pizza guy.
Hilarious.
He is just hilarious in this movie. So, listen, this movie is not going to be for everybody. It's the type of horror that I want. It's the type of, storytelling I want. It's just about two people in a cabin telling stories to each other, telling horror stories. And the way that it's just directed and shot, it's just so really, really good. And like I said, it's never bigger than what it needs to be. They never go over what they need to, and it's just the way that what you are learning about these two characters as they tell these stories, and the story builds and develops, just awesome.
It's essentially like the best way I could describe it, essentially like if someone was like, I want to make a modern version of the Canterbury Tales, but assuming that they were going to tell horror stories to each other, which, I mean, listen, some of the tales in the Canterbury Tales are quite horrific, but like, that's what it reminded me of, and it has a very interesting perspective, and I completely agree with you. The revelations about the characters as they're telling story is really incredible, and it makes you ask like a lot of questions about authorial presence within a work. There's a lot done with talking about like artist and creation and like gender dynamics within those communities. There's some really interesting stuff happening in this film. People should check it out.
Absolutely.
If you've not watched it yet.
And number one, I'm actually not going to talk about too much, because I have a feeling I know this one lands on your list. But because you and I just love this one. Vast of Night. Yeah, Vast of Night. Another Amazon movie, PG-13, sci-fi. And I don't want sci-fi to scare people away from it. It's a quiet film, in that...
Literally.
Yeah, in every sense of it. This is going to be the type of film that's not going to be for everybody, not because it's bad or not because it has anything weird. It's just, it depends on what you like in a film. And this one, for you and I, fell exactly perfectly where we want it to be. It's a slow burn that's all about the performances and the cinematography. The film is directed by Andrew Patterson. It stars Sierra McCormick as Faye and Jake Horowitz as Everett. It's about a one night in New Mexico in the late 50s. It's a switchboard operator and a radio DJ, and about how they're connecting, and he's kind of helping her learn about about what she's doing. And they get a strange frequency, and it's them trying to figure out what this strange frequency is and where it's coming from. And then it just plays out like a great 1950s sci-fi film, and it is awesome.
No, it really is. And well, I mean, I'll talk about it in a little bit, because let's just pretend for a second it's probably on my list.
There are aspects of it. I mean, there is a scene that goes for about 2 or 3 minutes of just no talking. And it's just looking at the characters. I mean, the shot stays on these actors, and I know that turns some people off, but to us it builds, and it is so good.
Well, and I think you and I, we love a slow film. We love something that really takes its time, that's pretty meditative, that makes you kind of like lean into it. And listen, the 1950s like sci-fi aesthetic is not for everyone. It's literally our aesthetic.
Yes.
So, and I think about 50 times this year I've said to you, like, we're going to cosplay as them, right? Like, at some point we're going to cosplay, and then I think you've pointed out, like, you essentially dress like her. We don't need to cosplay. Like, but
definitely check it out. But I think this is a good time to pivot and get your top 5.
And there's definitely overlap, but there's not actually as much as I thought there was going to be. I think we have some divergent points, although it honestly makes me really sad that Troop Zero is not in here. Just how you were talking about it, I'm like, that's right, Troop Zero should have been on my list. But, so my number 5, which is weird because we have the same number 1, so it's almost like really your number 6.
Yeah.
But, so my number 5 is Happiest Season.
Excellent.
And it's interesting because obviously, Jingle Jangle is on my list, so it's weird to have like holiday films. If you've not seen Happiest Season, it's on Hulu. It's starring Kristen Stewart, and it was directed by Clea Duvall, and written by Clea Duvall. And I was like, that name sounds kind of familiar. So I went on her IMDb because I didn't know this. And she's actually probably more familiar to many of us as an actress from essentially played the emo girl in all of these movies. The Faculty.
The Faculty, yeah.
She's All That, Can't Hardly Wait, and, okay, not the emo girl, but a really important part of the film, Argo. So she's much more known as an actress. I love this film. It's such a great holiday film. It's, so, you don't have a lot of, like, holiday films that are centered around LGBTQIA like storylines. This film has an incredible amount of heart. It does everything you want a holiday film to do. It has like kind of its hopeful, things that, maybe for some will feel cliche because it's a holiday film, but I felt very genuine. There's this one scene in particular between Kristen Stewart and Dan
Levy.
Thank you, Dan Levy. That is so perfect. I think I grabbed your arm at one point. It is such a great holiday film. Aubrey Plaza, I think it is the most magnetic performance I've ever seen from her, and I love Aubrey Plaza, but this is a very different role.
I was very happy to see her in this because I agree with you. It gave her a lot more depth than we have seen before.
Yes, and honestly, like I know there are a lot of people who hate on Kristen Stewart's acting prowess. You and I are big defenders of hers ever since she, her turn as Tracy in Into the Wild. If you've not seen her in Alice, Kristen Stewart has really great acting chops, and this is an exact case study in why she should be taken more seriously as an actress.
Agreed. She and Robert Pattinson we talked about earlier being so great in Tenet, and both of them have these careers of going, guys, look at these films. Like, and here's
Stop
the thing.
It with the Twilight.
Kristen Stewart, I'll say, has had a couple of dud films, and then what happens is but when she hits, and this is one of them, I agree with you, she's fantastic in it.
Yeah. So then my number 4 film is going to be The Invisible Man, directed by Leigh Whannell.
Oh my gosh.
So when you mentioned it earlier, I was like, oh, that's actually on my list, but I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
No. It's beautiful. It's eerie. There is so much done within this film in terms of, and like certainly like oftentimes I'm looking for gender dynamics when I'm watching film and looking like feminist criticism, but like this is a film that like I really had middling feelings about. We watched the kill count for it. I didn't get it. I went in oppositional because I felt like, what are you really doing more with this Invisible Man story that I haven't seen? You're not really going to...
You're like, I'm a defender of Hollow Man all the way through.
God, no, what a terrible movie. For so many reasons, that movie is straight stinky garbage.
I didn't think it was that bad.
It's garbage. But, like, this is so expertly directed. Elizabeth Moss's performance is transcendent. Yeah. It is such a great film, and it had me riveted from the opening shot. And I think, in a year where, again, you and I talked in the beginning about the not having the theater experience as we normally have had, it transported me right back in there of like the just kind of like sweeping landscape of those opening shots and that house and the intensity of the film, but not relentless, like not a relentless intensity. Except, all right, those last 20 minutes are pretty relentless, but in a way that is, you feel like the film has earned that attention from you. It's great. It's an interesting, really like meditation on and how we deal with abuse, and kind of like the secondary victimization of victims. It's great. I can't say enough about that movie.
Yeah, and I will always say something that stands to me. If you have a scene in a movie that's a complete surprise or shock, and it still hits even knowing it's coming, you've done something right.
I know exactly what scene you're talking about.
And
We will
that's
not spoil
with
it.
that, but
yes. So then from there, it was Jingle Jangle for me.
Excellent.
I love Jingle Jangle. It made my heart sing. And we've already obviously talked about that. My next film is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Oh, wow. I thought that was going to be number 1 for you.
It wasn't.
Well, number one over sub 5, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So if you're not familiar with August Wilson, so August Wilson wrote a series of 10 plays called The Pittsburgh Cycle, which was meant to express the Black American experience throughout the 10 decades of the 20th century on the East Coast. So in Pittsburgh, or I should say in Pittsburgh. With the intention of like trying to go decade from decade and like, kind of like look at the through lines. There's oftentimes like mystical elements within his plays. So you would probably know him or know August Wilson's work if you've seen the adaptation of Fences that was starring Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. This adaptation also stars Viola Davis. There is an upcoming one, which as right now is rumored to be directed by Ryan Coogler, starring John David Washington and Samuel L. Jackson. It's going to be an adaptation of The Piano Lesson, which is my favorite of the Pittsburgh Cycle films. And I actually teach the Piano Lesson. Well, actually, because of Doc Gilligan is why I teach The Piano Lesson. It's just Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. the filmmaking of this is directed by George C. Wolfe, who doesn't have like a robust directing, filmography. He directed The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks and Knights and Rodanthe. It is just, if you're familiar with August Wilson's work, you know that the conversations are fast-paced, intense. They go on for long periods, as like the tradition in theater, but it's very, very quick. And he does these brilliant things with the camera. It's constantly moving, particularly around the character of Levy, which is played by Chadwick Boseman in his last film performance, which every time they showed him within the first 15 minutes of the movie, I just kept grabbing her hand. It made me so sad. And the performance, honestly, at this point, if you weren't he's one of the finest actors of his generation, this would solidify it for you. I don't know how you wouldn't have thought that before this film, but oh my God, his performance was...
No argument. I had heard rumblings of that it was an Oscar-worthy performance, and, you had to wonder, what was, kind of fueling that, but after seeing it, oh my God, he was just dynamic and captivating the entire time. You were just tuned into every word he said and just every little aspect of that performance.
It's all those nuances, and you and I talked about this. There is a monologue that he has to give about his mother, and the first 5 seconds cue into all the things he's doing with his face, all the facial tics that he incorporates into the starting of that monologue. It is, and this is not even to get into Viola Davis's performance,
right.
Because Viola Davis is the best actress of our generation.
It's a great ensemble film, and Viola Davis is terrific in it by far. Everybody is, but there's no arguing that Chadwick Boseman steals the film. And
it's meant to be. The character of Levy is supposed to be, kind of like the central point. It's just, it is a great film. It's a great adaptation of the work. I can't recommend it enough.
It's on Netflix right now.
It's on Netflix. It's amazing. I applaud it at the end. And honestly, if we could do probably an episode just about that.
You and I talked about in a year we were looking to find, movies versus film, right? And not to sound snobby, but those films that you're going to rank in all time, an Oscar bait films, and we hadn't really seen a ton of those. We'd seen very good films. That one hit. Right away, we both got done and went, oh yeah, that's what we were missing this year.
It was truly just those performances that you wait for all year, and then when they're given to you, you just feel like it's like a bonus Christmas gift.
It didn't help though then that we juxtapositioned that to watch Wonder Woman right after, and it just made Wonder Woman look even more like a mess.
It made it all the worse. So it was just I just watched brilliance, and now I'm watching slop. This is awful. But that's the thing is, honestly, if for no other reason, you should watch this for Chadwick Boseman and Viola Davis's, twin, just, dynamic performances. And, it's such a great film. And I love August Wilson, so I was primed to love this to begin with, but it was just incredible. Incredible.
So, what is your number one?
That would be Vast of Night.
Yay!
I paused on saying it when you were talking about I loved Vast of Night. It honestly, much like the paired number one we're going to talk about, it's just really kind of asking for, it's essentially checking all of my boxes, but, I loved it. I loved the performances. I loved that it was restrained. It didn't feel the need to kind of to over dramatize what was already a really interesting, kind of essentially you have your hook. Your hook is they hear a strange frequency and then are spending the rest of the night trying to investigate it. And it did so well to go, the strangeness of this can be enough. It didn't need to push beyond, which is hard with a sci-fi film, to not want to kind of have big spectacle for considerable amount of time. And I won't spoil anything about the film because honestly, you should watch all of these movies because they're all fantastic. But Vast of Night is just a real honest and true treat, and it feels like being transported back in time, which is an interesting comment given in particular what we're talking about with the last film we'll discuss. It just was so phenomenally perfect. You felt the quiet, dusty nature of this town. But at that, it was so beautifully shot that I was like, well, I kind of want to be in this quiet, dusty town in New Mexico where it's one street and nothing going on. I loved, the performance of our two protagonists. They were so clearly defined from the beginning. They were strong performances. They felt, I don't know. I can't say enough about it because it was such like an interesting departure. Cause you and I love sci-fi. We love sci-fi superhero spectacles. We love big sci-fi film, but this was like that quiet sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
This was that your return to your, again, you had said the 1950s, but I would even say it's even more restrained than a lot of the 1950s sci-fi. It was really,
yes, I agree.
It honestly felt like a stage play.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider first-time writer, first-time director. Really honestly, that, if this is what you did first, well, you've got me for at least your next 5.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
I'll watch whatever Andrew Patterson puts out.
Yeah, it was truly phenomenal.
So now we get to
our favorite film.
And this ended up being, like I said, that's our top 5. We just want to talk about film of 2020 because it deserves to be talked about. So that's why we kind of did it this way. But our number 1, it's a film. I mean, it is so incredibly good, and it's a film lover's dream of a movie, and it is directed by one of my all-time favorite directors, Mr. David Fincher. And I would say it is one of his most interesting takes of his directing, filmography. And he just nails it. And that movie is
Mank.
And from here, I will just say I love it, but I'll let you take over.
Well, and I think this is probably precursor to the fact. So we watched this last evening. And at the end of the film, I stood up. And, I think for about 45 minutes, I just stood in front of our recliners and didn't stop talking.
That is very true.
It's accurate.
We do not have that much time at this point.
We
also both gave the Orson Welles clap gif at the end. Just literally in our living room, just the two of us clapping at the end of the movie.
Throughout the credits. Yeah. Because I couldn't believe what I had just seen. And listen, all of the films that we saw, and this is particularly felt like a treat. So we started our year with films like Troop Zero and Vast of Night. We ended our year with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and Mank. And so I feel in that way there are gifts that have been given to us in 2020 in terms of film that cannot be denied. But I would say the present with the biggest bow is this film. First off, I would say that this is David Fincher's best directed film. And I know you're a big Fincher fan,
it's up there. I mean, it's, that's a hard, you know that I'm going to always go 7. I mean, it's my all-time favorite film. Of course. But yeah, it's up there.
The problem is my favorite David Fincher film is, before Mank was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. So obviously I like a very different trajectory of his career, but so Mank, if you don't know
I'm not
this,
going to argue that it's his best.
Fair enough. So Mank is the story of Herman Mankiewicz, who was the depending on how you want to look at this, he was the writer of the screenplay for Citizen Kane. The story is told in a nonlinear fashion of how he came to be the one to write this film for Orson Welles. Now, granted, giving obviously this was Orson Welles' idea, and if you know the story of Citizen Kane is that it is meant to be a pretty open and direct criticism of the newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst and his love affair with Marian Davies. It's a pretty damning film. It does not portray William Randolph Hearst in obviously the kindest light if you've seen Citizen Kane. So here's the thing. Citizen Kane is one of those movies that I will not be as bold to say it, how could you, but also kind of how could you not have seen Citizen Kane, but I'll say this. Citizen Kane is one of those movies that I think is very intimidating because of all of the praise that comes with it. So it's when do you sit down and watch that type of movie if you've never seen it before? I would say you need to watch Citizen Kane before you watch this movie because it'll make you appreciate this film more. However, if you can't, please just watch this movie because it is so brilliant. From the opening title sequence, it is like being taken in a time machine back to the golden age of Hollywood, but in a way that openly criticizes the golden age of Hollywood, shows you what an absolute abject villain Louis B. Mayer was, allows you to see within those dynamics, both politically, socially, gender, race. It really does try to hit and score on notes of criticizing this time, while also reminding you of why these films were so beautiful and considered the golden age of cinema. It transports you back into that studio system. It allows you to kind of see like the advent of all of these like amazing careers. And it really allows you like, the performances here. I mean, at this point, I feel like saying like, Gary Oldman obviously is a phenomenal actor. So to talk about one of his performances being, so like transportive can feel like, well, obviously. But here's the thing. His last few performances have not been our favorites. I did not love his turn as Winston Churchill in The Darkest Hour. I essentially thought he had really good prosthetics. And interestingly enough, he wanted to wear intense prosthetics so he would look more like Herman Mankiewicz. And David Fincher said, no, I want this to be a personal performance. And thank God he did, because this performance feels incredibly personal because of that decision.
I would argue that it's his best performance.
I would not disagree with you. It's genius.
He's so good. I mean, we love Gary Oldman, obviously. And I will say I'm a little less harsh about his turn as Winston Churchill. I thought he was very good. I just hated the film itself as a whole. But yeah, he's just fantastic in it. And
I know exactly what you're about to say next, and I'm going to jump in because I just want to gush. Amanda Seyfried's performance as Marian Davies, give that girl the gold. Oh my gosh.
Yes, she was awesome.
She brought a gravitas to understanding that personage that I've never seen before. Because I think, so Marian Davies was a very successful actress in the 1930s, who, as if you know the story of Citizen Kane, had a very, public love affair with William Randolph Hearst. And oftentimes how she's portrayed, if you've ever seen the film Singin' in the Rain, and the character that, I don't know if that's necessarily supposed to be, mirrored after Marian Davies, but she's oftentimes portrayed flighty, flimsy, floozy, just not with any tethering to this earth in a way that's not cartoonish. Like, she is often portrayed as exactly as, unfortunately the through line of what most people know of Marian Davies, which was she was the mistress of William Randolph Hearst. But she was so much more than that, and a solid actress in her own right. And this film finally gives her her due and says that we're going to explore this character in which she is just as fun, just as vibrant, but we're going to give her the depth and the understanding of who she was really in that narrative beyond what you know of Citizen Kane. To me, in many ways, the film Mank is kind of like an apology to Marian Davies for how she was not really dealt with in the most appropriate way. And there's an interesting part in which, like, Mank in the film, talks about, like, well, it's not really supposed to be her. But the problem is that most people, if you know anything about Marian Davies, you know about her via her or the portrayal of her within Citizen Kane. So you don't have the most flattering understanding of her. And Amanda Seyfried, first off, I mean, she looked... Local girl, yeah, so local love, local Allentown girl, like, but she looks like, she's ripped from the 1940s to begin with. Like, there's something about, how she, essentially takes on the personage of Marian Davies. I mean, she looks like classic Hollywood beauty on film. But then she does these really important things with this character where I think you understand her at these depths in which I've never understood Marian Davies and never have desire to understand Marian Davies beyond what I know. Again, those just kind of like those few sentences that we know about her. But she made me I want to write David Fincher a letter and say, you coward, give me the Marian Davies movie. I need it. I want just a movie about her, and I want Amanda Seyfried to play her, and I want to watch her for 2.5 hours. She was genius in this film.
Can't argue with any of that. Exactly where I would say, except for probably you have a lot more history than I would have been able to add to it, but I agree completely. I also thought Lily Collins was fantastic in this movie. Really enjoy her, but this movie was just by far her best role. It's understated. It's not a huge role, but it's the powerful punch that it needs to be. Well,
and it's one of those great roles where immediately it's the leave them wanting more, and I think Fincher did exactly that. Like, there were many times where I was like, well, no, make her scene longer. Like, and that's a credit to the performance, but it's also, it's a credit to the directing that, he knew when to infuse her into the movie and when not. And this is a movie that's very, dominated by, like, male performances because, it's dealing with, kind of the Hollywood system, like, honestly, with that, So her and Lily Collins are the most like kind of significant female performances in the film. So whenever she's in it, it feels like a light bulb has been turned on in the movie. Yeah. Like it's truly, honestly, it's a great performance. And honestly, the film, you can talk about a lot of films that are love letters to old Hollywood. And a lot of times that comes down to because of the setting, because of, the subject matter, La La Land obviously, very much falls in that like some modern love letter. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood falls very much into that as well. This to me felt like he made so many smart decisions of referencing through shot composition and through angling Citizen Kane and films of that era, but not without feeling like it was some repetition or some sort of like pastiche or some sort of like, I'm clearly here trying to seem like Orson Welles. Right. And it's really interesting because like after the film, like, so after I had my 45-minute speech about why I love the film so much in our, living room, after midnight, I then started looking up articles where David Fincher is actually very critical of Orson Welles, essentially does not call him the wonderkind he also often gets like associated as being. So I thought it was like really interesting, the film felt very Fincher, but it also, it did its due diligence to using filmmaking technique and styling of the time to make us understand or to make us feel more genuinely within that filmic space. Because I think part of it is there's actually a scene, it's a cruel scene, but there's a scene with Louis B. Mayer when he is talking to a grouping of his actors and, essentially like behind the scenes personnel of like, that are part of the MGM family. And I say it's a cruel scene because once you watch the movie, you'll understand why. But like, it's so brilliantly done. Like it's so pulled back so you can really see Louis B. Mayer, but then like, in many ways, like the people who are in the risers kind of almost look like a blob of like human, because it's, there's just so many, I can't say enough about how this film was shot and the decisions that were made. The scenes at, what's supposed to be, the Hearst Castle, just phenomenal. And I think there's a dinner sequence at the Hearst Castle, if I understand correctly. They Fincher made them do the take 200 times. Oh, yeah.
I was going to make the reference that he kind of is our modern day Kubrick, right?
That's big praise.
Every piece of film, every moment, every aspect of it is thought out, and that's what makes him, the genius that he is, because there's not unused space in anything. There's something going on in every aspect of every frame of the film.
Yes.
And this, he goes outside of his box of, some of the style he's made in the past, but still, exactly like you said, still has all of these, for lack of a better word, Fincherisms in it. Like, it is just, it's just a beautifully, perfectly dynamic film.
Yes. And honestly, like even if you knew nothing of Citizen Kane, I think the film works and stands on its own.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think, as you know a little bit about Citizen Kane, that's about all you need to enjoy the film. But
yes. And like there's just really interesting things done. It's very clever. It's very cheeky about how it plays with timeline and perspective, which I really enjoyed. It felt like a wink and a nudge. It never felt overdone. But I agree completely with what you said. There's like not one piece of, now granted, I know it wasn't filmed on celluloid, but there's like literally not like one moment in this film that's not like accounted for as to why it's in the film. Yeah. And that's really important because there's not one moment where you go, this is wasted space. You needed to use like a better, like have a better sense of economy when you're telling this story. Like, no, every part of it mattered and felt important and felt like, well, that shot's brilliant. Like, I mean, honestly, it's a masterclass. I have no problem saying I think this is his best film. And I have, great joy to say this is our favorite film of the year and came in under the wire the day before we were going to record this episode. I'm so glad we got
to see it because I agree with you. It's just the best film of the year.
Yeah, it is, truly.
And I don't think for you and I, there's no argument about that at this point.
No, for sure not.
But kind of, that kind of sums up our year. So now we start looking ahead to 2021, right?
Yes.
And, kind of the films that we're anticipating for the next year. Again, a lot of these may not end up coming out next year because we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know what's going to get shifted. And a lot of these were probably on our list of anticipated films for 2020.
You and I at one point, I remember having a very hearty conversation looking at, the films that probably would have been the Oscar season of 2020 and going, man, this year is going to be something.
Right.
And then going, man, this year is nothing.
Yeah, it's funny, my list. I had a top 5. What did you have?
I have a top 7.
Yeah. So let me hear your top 7.
And I won't speak at length about any of these films. So my number 1, with a bullet, it is the movie I'm most anticipating, and it hurts me down to the fibers of my being that I've not seen it yet. In the Heights.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now my number 1. It is the movie. If you talk about what lack of release makes me the most sad, In the Heights not coming out makes me the most sad. From there, it's Black Widow.
Oh,
because I love Black Widow. Dune. I'm really anticipating Dune because it looks amazing. Denis
I'm
Villeneuve.
curious because I'm still skeptical of Timothy Chalamet in that part, but
the film itself looks.
Timothy Chalamet of Pippin's fame.
Pippin's fame, yes. From there, it's
inside joke there.
Top Gun.
Oh yeah.
And then
saw a great trailer of that over.
Yes, I did. Yeah, no, it was expertly done. No Time to Die, the new Bond film.
Oh yeah.
I knew you weren't going to care about that. You saw Casino Royale. I think it's the only Bond film you've seen from beginning to end, and what I need to go no further.
Listen, if you put me in a James Bond themed party in London, England, I'm all about it. After that,
an immersive experience where the film happens around you. A whole nother story.
Secret Cinema,
time.
Look it up.
Secret Cinema. And then from there, it's The French Dispatch, the new Wes Anderson film.
Awesome, yeah.
That trailer looked insane.
Oh, I gotta be honest, that didn't even hit my list, and it should have.
And the 7th, the sequel to my favorite romantic comedy of all time, Coming to America 2.
And I'll just say that's going to be definitely an episode in our new year of How Could You Podcast, but we'll get there. So
yes.
Yeah.
What are yours?
A couple of ones that are coming out that just people should be excited about, I think. Old, which is the M. Night Shyamalan movie, which huge fans in this household of.
Yes.
So we'll see. We'll see what it comes with that. The Baz Luhrmann Elvis film, I think, has real potential.
It does, truly.
So
yes.
Super excited about that. Cruella starring Emma Stone. Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Quiet Place 2, Godzilla vs. Kong. Those are the ones that a lot of people are going to be excited. So my top 5, real quick. Top Gun 2 is where I'm right with you. I'm excited about that. So that made my top 5. In the Heights. I mean, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, give me the movie. Give me the movie.
That trailer gets me so hyped up. Yeah. Like, it may make me want to work out again.
Yeah, let's not get excited here. Number 3, Last Night in Soho. Cannot wait for this. That's the new Edgar Wright film starring Anya Taylor-Joy.
Which...
had an awesome year.
Had a phenomenal year.
Amazing Emma. I don't care what anybody says. Her role in The New Mutants was awesome. She kicked ass in that movie.
And I liked New Mutants a lot.
Yeah, I mean, really there's a lot of awful about her character in that movie, but she was also great in it.
Her character is odious and horrifying, but that's what she's supposed to be.
And then, obviously, Queen's Gambit, she's blowing up for it. So can't wait for that. Number 2, Halloween Kills.
Of
Jason
course.
Blum has said that movie will come out this year no matter what.
It has to.
I'm hoping it's a movie theater experience that we feel comfortable going and see, but I'm excited for it at home if I have to see it that way. And then number 1, you probably left it off your list.
I did because I knew you wanted to talk about it.
Ghostbusters Afterlife. I mean...
call it fate.
Call it karma. I cannot wait. It is... that is the one where you talked about movies that you just are so like 2020 movies we missed out. That is by far the one that's bummed me out. But it's supposed to be March. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We still get to see it in March. I have a feeling it's going to get pushed back again.
I think it's going to be the summer.
But we'll see. But they've only had one trailer, and that trailer was awesome, and I just cannot wait. And I'm just excited to watch Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 to get ready for it. I
honestly, I think...
take my money now, please.
I think your face when they announced the pushback of that or the delay on it was truly, truly heartbroken. It was like a little child, it honestly looked like your childhood dreams were like crushed.
I want to see it in the theater, so there's that part of me that's happy it got pushed back.
Yeah.
But on the same token, I also know the situation, and I just don't know when and how that's going to work. So I don't know how I feel about the March release. If like I want it just to be out so we can see it, or if I want to still wait until the theater experience is back and running again. I don't know, but I want to see it. I think now I'm here now. If I have to turn off all the lights in our apartment and watch it, give it to me.
I will invest in a projector and a screen. It will happen. So those, I mean, listen, we're anticipating a lot of films, and honestly, when you list them all together, it sounds like a, embarrassment of riches, and, it's weird to think about, like, those were the films we were supposed to see this year. But, whenever they come out, however they come out, we'll be more than happy to have them and excited, and I hope they live up to the, dramatically large expectations we've given them.
So now that, if you're still listening to us at this point, as we have gone way over our normal time slot, we want to kind of finish out the year, finish out our season 1, and talk a little bit review of the podcast. And Lauren, I just kind of want to pass it over to you. Do you have any thoughts that you want to talk about, or anything kind of looking back at the How Could You podcast year in review?
It was all right. No, honestly, this has been a really fun adventure to take on. We had talked about this early, and we realized that, we wanted to do something creatively together, which was kind of spurned from a 48-hour quarantine film challenge we had done back in April. And we realized that creating together is something that we really enjoyed. And this is something that's very much like you're getting a little sneak peek into our normal life. What we do is we normally sit around, we watch a movie, and then we talk about it for about 5 hours after. We've distilled it down to normally an hour-long episode, but this has just been a lot of fun to get to do with you, and like not to get too, overly sappy, but like I'm going to because it's me. This has just felt like, honestly, the best gift of this year, to have this time to get to do this with you, to get to create something together, to get to talk about film in a different way, because we're normally not taking notes. We're, it's really given me a very hopeful outlet during this mess of a year that has, if you're lucky, has just been weird. And it's really honestly been a bright spot, and truly a lot of that comes from just getting to say, we're going to take this dedicated time and sit across from each other and talk about a movie for an hour. It really has felt like a gift to be able to do that as a couple, and then to get to see our friends, our family, and, distant travelers beyond that have come to this and have given us...
That one random person out in Ireland that we still don't know.
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah, email us.
Email us. We have so many questions.
Beyond belief.
How could you podcast at gmail.com? Who are you? I honestly, the response from our friends and family has just meant everything, because we didn't know what this was going to be. I don't think we still know 100% what it is, but we know we're enjoying it, and everything you have all offered, your support, your love, listening to it, because we have to imagine, someone had recently said to us, like, they didn't know how to feel about the fact that we were doing this, like, what is it going to be? And like, it's just really meant a lot.
Yeah, same. I mean, it's been such an outlet of both, joy and therapeutic in its own right.
Truly.
Especially going through this year. And just so much fun to be able to be with my best friend and my wife, and as this podcast journey. And then, like you said, started off not knowing what was going to go on, and still don't know what's going to happen, but having a lot of fun on this journey right now. And, kind of looking back, I will say the most fun I had as an episode was Santa Claus. The Santa Claus episode just was a really good time with you doing that. And then, I think also I want to say that I think I was overly harsh about Friday the 13th. I would love to just go back and
Yeah, you really honestly slashed that movie to pieces.
But I think ultimately looking back on it, there's one moment that sums up this entire experience so far this year, and that's when we were doing the Nightmare Before Christmas episode. We got talking about Burden, and it was towards the end of the episode. We started talking about the movie Big Fish. And I look over at you, and you're talking about your grandfather and what that movie meant to you. And what people could not see behind the mic is your eyes, the watering, but this nostalgia and this heart and this love that was coming through. And it's the whole reason we started this, right? Like, what movies mean to us. They connect us with the people that we've lost. They've connect us with the people that we still have, and they connect us together. And it's been this, what art can do is give you inspiration and can give you just joy, and when those intersect with the people that we love, it just is the most wonderful experience you can have. And listening to you talk about your grandfather and what he meant to you, and connecting it with this film that you guys don't even think even saw the movie together.
No, we don't.
But it just meant to you. That's why we started this. It was this love of film and what it means to us, and being able to put that out to all the people that we love, and then hopefully that will expand out. And that's where we're at, right? And it's all about just putting out what we love into the world and hoping that it connects with other people. And it was beautiful just listening to you talk about that. So that is the moment I will take most from this year with this experience.
Oh, as always, well said.
And, and going back to what you said, it's a thank you to all the fans, right?
Yes.
Like, whether it's you guys are family, whether you're friends, or whether you're just random people that somehow found us, we love all of you, and we are appreciative of all of you. We're up to over 700 plus listens on all of our shows, and that is just mind-blowing to us. So we know that your time is important, and it's the biggest thing that you can give, and each of you are giving us your time when you sit down and you listen to us, whether it's on a commute, whether it's cleaning in the apartment, and that means the world to us.
Yes, so thank you really, truly to everyone, and we hope to give you some things that, hopefully you'll want to listen to in 2021.
Absolutely. Season 2 starting in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. We're taking a really long break of 2 weeks.
January 12th, we'll be back again.
Which, for very good reason, I think we both just went, I don't want to take that long. All right, let's do 2 weeks. So to tease some titles that you might be seeing in 2021, you might be seeing an episode about Pulp Fiction.
Ooh. Godfather.
Gladiator.
Taxi Driver.
So those are some episodes that might be coming up. There might be some.
We're gonna be getting back to a lot of the gaps in our film knowledge.
Yes.
So we got a little bit off during the holidays here, but we're gonna get back to that coming forward.
Yeah. So the original format will be coming back, but we do have some special episodes that are going to be coming too.
Absolutely.
In March.
This one was suggested by our friend Paul Reardon, and we thought it was a great idea.
Yeah. And I'm so excited about this. In March, we are going to be doing a 2-part episode about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We are going to rewatch the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, all 23 films in, prior to, obviously, what, phase 4? Is that what we're starting right now?
Yes.
So everything prior to phase 4. So we're going to be doing that. And then
in May, we're going to be doing, for May 4th.
And Revenge of the 5th.
Star Wars.
Yes, so we're going to do
just a retrospect of the entire franchise, and that one we're going to actually watch over an entire weekend, the entire franchise, including Rogue One and Solo, and we're going to sit down and talk about the entire franchise.
Yes, I imagine that it won't cause any debate at all.
Never. It's a film. It's going to be about the film franchise, so we are leaving out any of the shows during that discussion.
Yes, mainly because just for time purposes, I don't think we could fit The Mandalorian into the weekend as well, although if we could, I'm sure we would. So those are some of the things we have coming up in 2021. Those are just a few little teases, of things ahead.
Yeah, we can't wait. And this has been such an exciting time, and I appreciate everything, Lauren, that you allowed to make this happen. So thank you for everything this year.
Well, I appreciate everything you did. Because if you guys didn't know this, you may forget from our first, this was Ryan's idea, and he does not take credit for things easily, but this was his idea of something that we could do together, to create a podcast, and then, in kind of like a fever dream, you were like, what if we do it about like gaps in our film knowledge? Because you hadn't seen the Goonies, and I want to publicly shame you about that. And from there, an idea was born.
And now you guys are sitting listening, and we appreciate that.
Yes. So, if you aren't already, please follow us on Instagram at How Could You Podcast, on Twitter at How Could You Pod. You can always send us emails of suggestions to howcouldyoupodcast@gmail.com.
And as we kind of, end this year of 2020, which no matter what your situation was unique and difficult, and we understand that. But we ask for all of you to kind of also look back on any of the real positive moments, because I know for all of you that they are there, and those are the things that we want to focus on as we move into the new year. And as we change into 2021, we know that the change to midnight isn't going to make everything go away and all the difficulties we're facing. But what the strike of, midnight brings is hope. And it's what we all need. And as Andy Dufresne once famously said, hope is a great thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing dies. So with that, I wish all of you a very happy new year, a beautiful 2021 with all of the hope you can imagine. And until next time, enjoy the Odyssey.